So it's my opinion that some of the very best stories start with the same 4 words. Once upon a time. Once upon a time, a young king sat on his palace steps, quite anxiously awaiting the arrival of his new bride. She was traveling northwards from the land of the south, and the king, he ruled the land of the north. Now, the king knew the 2 countries had a few cultural differences, but the one that had him puzzled in this moment was folklore. In the land of the south, people told stories about magical women. This made very little sense to the king, because in the land of the north, in the land of the north, a different kind of magic was celebrated. The magic of justice and law, the magic of exploration and expedition, the magic of the hypothetical question and the scientific method of truth that can be bottled and packaged and sold. And there are magical things about that, I think. But these stories are about something a little different. Meanwhile, this princess rode northwards in her carriage, and with her she carried a special parting gift from her mother. It was a silver diadem, a crown, that had 12 beautiful gemstones of different colors inlaid into it. When her mother gave her this parting gift, she said, "This will help you unlock your power." Kind of a mysterious thing to say, and that was all that she said. So the princess had to ponder on this, the long carriage ride up to her new home. When she arrived at the land of the north, the court threw a beautiful feast for her, and the feast was followed by a dance. If there was anything this princess loved, she loved to dance. She danced until the sun went down, and then again until the sun came up. She danced so long that she wore little holes into the soles of her shoes. And the first time the king saw her dancing, he thought, well, maybe women are magical after all. Now, the next day, the first day of their marriage, they stood in their bedchamber, and the queen was unpacking her things. She pulled out her silver diadem, and the king chortled. "No wife of mine is going to be caught dead wearing a silver crown to court. We'll have to get you one made out of gold." "What do you mean?" she said. "Well, everybody knows gold is the more precious metal. It's worth so much more. It's like the difference between the sun and the moon." The queen, under her breath, muttered, "Well, I'd like to." And then, out loud, "If I can't wear it to court, then we'll just have to keep it somewhere in the room, somewhere prestigious." Oh, I know. There was a large dresser in the bedroom, so she set it right there on top of the dresser where it could be on display for her and the king. Now, a couple nights later, one night, the queen awoke to a very distinct clink. The king could sleep through anything, and he did, but the queen, she was a light sleeper, and that woke her up. She jolted out of bed, and she walked toward the sound. The little garnet stone had somehow fallen out of her diadem, and it was right there on the floor underneath her, in a groove between the floorboards. Odd. When she bent over to pick it up, something even stranger happened. That garnet started rolling away from her, right down the groove in the floorboard, all the way up until it hit the bedpost. Smack! When it hit the bedpost, something magical happened, and a square doorway in the floor opened up, revealing a large stairwell. The little garnet stone, it kept going. Plink, 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 all the way down the stairwell, and the queen decided she better follow. She went down many, many stairs until her toes reached rich, cold soil. She was standing in a cave that was so big she couldn't actually see the other end of it, but she could see, which was surprising. Somehow the moonlight illuminated the space, and it was bouncing and refracting off of diamond dust that seemed to cover the walls. She could see a river in the cave, a river that fed into a lake, and she could see that little garnet stone that finally stood still. So she picked it up, and as she held it in her hand, she noticed for the first time that it was cut in the same shape as a seed. Odd. No, gemstones don't grow anything, she told herself. But again, magical doorways don't usually open up your bedroom floor either. So she decided, what the hey, I'll plant this thing. With her fingers, she depressed the soil a little bit, she laid the garnet seed there, and when she covered it over, immediately something sprouted out of the earth. But it wasn't green and tender, it was magenta and carved, a little garnet sprout. With that, a cold wind swept through the cave, and the queen knew it was time to return to the land above. So she ascended the staircase, the doorway closed, and she went to sleep wondering what on earth all of that could mean. But she didn't have to wait long, because 9 months later, the queen gave birth to her first daughter, a little girl that the king and queen named January, after the month in which she was born. The following year, it happened all over again, but this time it was the amethyst that fell out of the crown, and so when she went down into the cave to plant it, she planted it right next to the garnet plant that had now grown up to her knee. The following year it happened again, and this time with the aquamarine, and you can guess what happened then. Just like with the amethyst, 9 months later, the queen gave birth to a baby girl. With the amethyst, they named her February. With the aquamarine, they named her March. And this happened every year for 12 years, until the king and queen were the proud parents of 12 beautiful baby girls, all named after the month in which they were born. They were very happy, although the king was somewhat distressed, because the land of the north had always been ruled by male magistrates, and it had been the king's object to make sure that that tradition continued. The queen was very pleased, but she'd been keeping this secret from her husband about the magical cave. She didn't know if he would believe her, and she always intended to tell him, but ran out of time, sadly, because after the birth of her 12th baby, she passed away. The king, in his grief, he forbid anyone from speaking her name. Just hearing her name sent him into a spiral of sorrow that he couldn't tolerate. Everyone in the kingdom suffered, but the little princesses suffered the very most. They wanted to know who their mother was. They wanted to know who they were. Fortunately, January, the eldest princess, was just about to turn 13. And on the eve of her 13th birthday, late at night, a magical doorway opened up in her floor. She went down the many steps and stood in a cave, where she found an avenue of little trees that were growing. The garnet tree was fully mature, but the rest of them were in varying heights, and as she stood there among those beautiful gemstone trees, she felt her mother, somehow. Her mother was there with her. She knew that she'd be returning to this cave many, many times. Every year after that, when one of her little sisters experienced their 13th birthday, that doorway would open, and January would lead the way and introduce them to the beautiful gemstone trees that their mother had planted for them. And at first, everything was balanced and really good. But as time wore on, the girls realized that they could open this doorway just by wishing to. And they missed their mother so much. And so night after night after night, they go down into this cave. And they started sleeping during the day and only being awake at night. Their father, in the haze of his grief, wasn't really aware of what was going on. And the longer the girls spent in this magical cave, the more they explored. They got up to the river, and they found little boats, and they rowed those boats up to the lake. And on the other side of the lake, they found a magical castle, where there just so happened to be 12 princes, all the same ages as these 12 princesses. And that's when they started to dance. Because they did take after their mother, you know. They danced so long and so hard that night after night they wore holes into the soles of their shoes. And when they came back up to their bedroom in the morning time, they had to go report to their father, "Father, we need new shoes. All 12 of you." "What? We can't tell you why." Okay. The first few weeks he obliged and he replaced the shoes, but as time wore on and the shoes wore out, he had an idea. He'd been looking for a son for a long time, and he thought, well, we'll make it a contest. I'm going to send out a proclamation. Whomever can figure out where it is that my 12 little dancing princesses go every night, he will be the new king. What do you think? Did January like this idea very much? No. Now, what's our father ever done for us? I don't need a man to rule the kingdom. That's my job. We're going to make sure that this never happens. And so whenever a suitor would come to the kingdom and sleep in the adjoining room, they were to figure out the mystery. The 12 dancing princesses, they would make him a warm glass of milk that was drugged with a special sleeping concoction, something that would make the suitor sleep even more deeply than the king himself. And so night after night, the girls snuck down into the cave where they danced, and nobody was ever any the wiser. That is until a new kind of suitor came to the kingdom. He was from a land far, far away, a gardener, a humble sort of man, And he decided he was going to try his hand at the northern kingdom. So he set off on his way, and as he did so, he ran into a woman. The woman told him a few things. "I can see into your heart," she said. "You are good and kind. And because of that, I need you to know this. Don't drink the milk. Just pretend. Once you've pretended, look as though you're fast asleep. And then here's this." She presented him with an invisibility cloak. "Put this on and follow the 12 dancing princesses down the stairs, and there you will solve the mystery and see what it is they do every night." So the gardener decided to follow her advice. He came to the kingdom. He slept in the adjoining room. When the 12 little princesses gave him the milk to drink, he pretended that it tasted oh so good. Out. The princesses were pleased with themselves. See, it worked again. We don't have to worry about him. The doorway opened and they descended. When they'd gotten out of sight, the gardener quickly clothed himself and followed down the stairwell. The first thing he saw was these beautiful gemstone trees. He was so taken by their magnificence. They couldn't possibly have been carved by human hands. No, it looked like they were grown. How could they be grown? He touched the branches and then bent over and gathered a few fallen leaves from the tree. He continued to follow the princesses across the river, across the lake, into the castle, and saw that they were stuck somehow in their grief, stuck in this space of imagination and intuition, and unable to let go of the past. He felt great love for all of them, but perhaps especially for the eldest princess, January. And so he ascended, and the next morning, when the king called his meeting, the gardener said, "I'd like to make sure that your eldest daughter is there with us." He presented the leaves that he had gathered, and both January and the king were astounded. He told the story, and January confirmed that it was true. And that is when the gardener shared one final tidbit. He said, "There was a woman who came to me. That's how I was able to pull this off. And she had a crown with 12 missing gemstones." Gardener didn't know what this meant, but the king did, and so did January. And with that one small admission, all of their hearts were healed, because though she was gone, she lived on. The gardener and January were married and decided that they would rule the kingdom together as equals. On the night of their marriage, they descended one final time into the magical cave, and they picked a piece of fruit off of the garnet tree, a piece of fruit that they broke open, and there were 4 gemstones, a ruby, an emerald, a pearl, and another garnet. They had a special silver crown made for the new queen with those 4 gemstones, and they all lived happily ever after.